Once Told Tales, as read by the author Rick Tobin.
Izzy's Corner by Rick Tobin. Arriving into the world as a baby can be a surprise for anyone, but sometimes that arrival is a profound mystery. People don't like perplexing mysteries. Izzy's first memory was of a sky above, but of the wrong color. It was blue, not purple. It hurt his purple eyes, so he squeezed them shut hard as he wrestled inside the blue blanket surrounding him. There was soon something yellow above him. It was a strange creature. Chief Williams was leading firefighting for an abandoned building when he stepped away for a moment from the heat, smoke, and flames. That is when he heard the cries of an infant coming from a nearby garbage dumpster. He was shocked as he reached deep into the bin while still wearing his yellow turnout gear and face shield. What he found was disturbing. He immediately called for medical support from a nearby ambulance responding with the fire crew. The baby had bluish skin, no, almost purple, and big blue circles around its almost violet eyes. These colors meant it might not be breathing, but it was crying loudly, which made no sense. After the EMT medics checked the foundling, they were also puzzled. This baby was an oddity, even though it was perfectly healthy, but some from the ambulance wanted nothing to do with it, as it might be diseased. Chief Williams did not feel that way. After the fire was out, he made a commitment to help this strange child he had discovered, no matter what he had to do to protect it. Months passed, but no one in the city would adopt the misplaced baby. One day, as Chief Williams visited the city's adoption center, he was asked what he thought the baby's name should be. He was often asked by people he knew, "Is he this? Is he that? Is he normal?" So Chief Williams told the adoption agency that they should just call him Izzy. That was the only name the boy would ever have. Unfortunately, no family would adopt this strange infant, so the government agency was finally forced to find a foster family that would take money to raise him. All of the reliable foster families refused. That left the Thornhills. Jake Thornhill was a last resort as a father figure, but the adoption center could not afford to keep Izzy forever. At the age of 4, he was delivered into the hands of someone no one in the city trusted. Jake Thornhill was a widower, already raising 2 scruffy boys from his first marriage. There were many questions about what happened to his first wife. She abandoned her family, but left no note. She was never located. She often had violent arguments with Jake. Police were called several times to protect Mrs. Thornhill. After she disappeared, Jake found a new wife, Roberta, a single mom who was a heavy drinker and responsible for a daughter slightly younger than his 2 sons, Eddie and Jason. Some said the only reason Thornhill brought Roberta into his life was for the child support she received every month from her ex-husband and her monthly welfare check. Izzy added little value to their household, other than the monthly state child care money, which was seldom used for Izzy's needs. He was poorly clothed, fed little, and almost ignored except when Roberta's daughter, Monica, brushed his fuzzy red hair that poked out of his purplish face like weeds and wildflowers in their backyard. Over the years, Izzy endured abuse and bullying from the Thornhills, mostly from Eddie and Jason. Izzy was frail and spoke few words. He was an easy target. Besides being half-starved, he was forced to sleep on an old mattress on the floor in the small room he shared with the 2 brothers. They enjoyed tormenting him in his sleep by dragging feathers over his face like bugs that often crawled over the floor of the shack the family lived in at the end of a dirt road. When Izzy would awaken, startled, the brothers would slap his face, then laugh and go back to sleep, leaving Izzy shocked and terrified, crying throughout the night. Chief Williams did not forget about Izzy. He was not pleased with his placement with the Thornhills. He knew their reputation as an idle, rough bunch of troublemakers. Jake, the father, was under suspicion for selling stolen packages from people's porches. Chief Williams eventually became tired of firefighting and took a new job as an arson investigator for the local police department, which allowed him access to Thornhill's home. The shack was considered a fire hazard because of its poor electrical wiring, and Jake Thornhill's constant smoking of cigarettes had once caught a couch on fire. Every time Williams visited the rundown home, he grew more concerned about Izzy's treatment, but he could not convince the Child Protective Services to do anything, since no one else would take Izzy. Williams was even warned not to try to adopt Izzy, since he was not married and held a dangerous job that might leave Izzy as an orphan. Years passed, and Izzy eventually was old enough to attend school. It is a wonder he survived the mistreatment in Thornhill's eroding house. Izzy tried to avoid all of them, except for when it was time to eat. Jake and his boys were always first to eat, and then Roberta and Monica, with what remained often leaving more scraps or even an empty plate for Izzy. Izzy remained thin and frail. His only escape at the shack was sitting in the backyard jungle of weeds under the sun. Sunlight gave him enough nourishment to sustain his weak body. He especially enjoyed one small raised plot with its unusual purple flowers that sprang up near an old wire fence at the edge of the ignored yard. They smelled like nothing else. It made him homesick for some other place, but that was confusing to Izzy, as he had never known another place. He spent hours there in peace, as nobody else in the family ventured into the homegrown wilderness. Once a year, the government gave Izzy a gift card for clothing. It couldn't be used by anyone else, which infuriated Jake and his sons, who wanted the money for themselves. Izzy went to a clothing store and bought clothes he liked. One thing he loved was bright red socks. One year he got them and a pair of bright red boots to wear over them. Eddie was especially cruel in teaching other children at the school to taunt Izzy by saying, red socks, can't smile, can't talk, Izzy, busy, buzzy, boo. Look at that thing from the zoo. Izzy didn't mind. He just kept walking quietly down the halls of the school every day, usually alone and avoided by most children. People ignored him until he did something so unusual that people whispered or asked questions of his adopted father. One day, in the schoolyard, Izzy found a small bird lying near a brick wall. It did not move in his hand as he picked it up. Other children had stayed away from it, because it was icky. Not Izzy. He held the bird and blew air into its beak. Some of those gathered reported a strange blue glow around Izzy just before the bird recovered and suddenly flew away. Izzy said nothing, but smiled a little as he turned, walked through the crowd, and shuffled back to his class in his red boots. Jake Thornhill was furious when he had to visit the school and talk to the assistant principal about the bird-saving event. Thornhill dragged Izzy most of the way home, and once inside, slammed him down in a chair at the rickety table. He didn't say much to Izzy. He simply stared in blue clouds of cigarette smoke at Izzy's blue face and the purple eyes Thornhill hated. He enjoyed how hard it was for Izzy to breathe when he got a cigarette treatment. Izzy's stepmother sat on a nearby couch, ignoring all of this, half drunk, as she took huge swallows from a liquor bottle. When his stepbrothers arrived home after school, Thornhill yelled at them to take better care in watching Izzy so nobody saw him do stupid stuff that would cause problems for the family. Then he sent them all to bed with no supper, but only after he blew more smoke over Izzy, making him cough and choke. This was when the bullying reached a fury, as Jason egged on Eddie to slap and trip Izzy, and maybe to punch him. Jason finally pulled Eddie back when it got out of hand and Izzy collapsed from the blows. That night, the stepbrothers threw Izzy in his mattress next to an unfinished corner of the shack, where the walls were not completely finished, allowing the cold and heat from outside to creep over Izzy where he slept. Jason laughed as he tossed Izzy's clothes and red boots in a pile near the mattress, telling him that the bugs and spiders and snakes would get him. "Maybe you can heal them," Eddie shouted as he threw a worn blanket at Izzy's shaking feet, where he whimpered in the corner by himself. It was cold at night in the early fall, but Izzy seemed to adapt. The cold didn't seem to affect him. He could look out at night and see stars and the moon. They called to him in musical sounds as the moonlight shone on the board slats and onto his purplish skin. When there was pale sunlight at dawn, he could see the mound of purple flowers still blooming in the yard as other weeds faded away from their summer growth. The stepbrothers felt they had the right to do anything they wanted now, with no repercussions. They were tired of Izzy for the moment and decided to attack little Monica. They caught her trying to comfort Izzy by brushing his hair. Eddie grabbed the brush away from her arm as Jason twisted her arm behind her back until she screamed and collapsed. They ran away, laughing, but Monica ran to her mother, crying in severe pain, unable to move her arm. She told her what the boys had done. Her mother immediately started a fight with Thornhill and blamed him for not controlling his boys. Meanwhile, she had to take Monica to a hospital as her arm was severely damaged. Thornhill called his boys to the kitchen table and demanded to know who did this. Eddie spoke first and claimed that they had saved her because Izzy was trying to harm her. Thornhill was furious and told his boys to punish Izzy for his attack on Monica. Jason and Eddie were thrilled that they could now beat on Izzy without any restrictions. They caught Izzy that night in his corner and beat him badly, giving him a black eye. The next day, when Izzy came to the kitchen table for a meal, it was clear he was injured. Thornhill blew smoke on him again and gave him an empty plate, saying he wouldn't get food anymore if he ever hurt his kids again. Izzy didn't know how to defend himself. He was in great pain and confused as he crawled back to his mattress and collapsed. Officer Williams made a surprise visit the day after hearing about Monica's treatment at the hospital. He demanded to see Izzy. He was angry when he saw how Izzy had been abused, but just like Monica. But Thornhill refused to let Williams talk to Izzy since the officer didn't have a warrant to enter the house. All he could do was look for fire safety. Thornhill sent Williams away after claiming that Izzy harmed Monica, and then he hurt himself in a fall since he was so clumsy. Williams heard the brothers laughing while hiding in the back area of the shack. Izzy kept tight to the wooden slats in his corner that night, praying he would be left alone. Just after midnight, as he rocked himself in agony on his sheetless mattress, a blue star in the horizon slowly grew larger and closer out of the night sky. Piercing brightness and movement towards his little corner interrupted his whimpers. In just minutes, a blue light filled his space as his pain disappeared. His black eye disappeared. The bruises and injuries from his beating faded. As the blue star's glow overwhelmed the dark space of the cabin, a purple mist seeped into the corner, surrounding Izzy. He stared in amazement through the slats, almost hypnotized in the enveloping fog. Izzy pushed at the slats and they melted away as Izzy suddenly had powerful strength. He walked silently forward through the new hole in the house and entered deep into the purple light until he was totally enveloped. The house faded away behind him. All he felt was a little queasiness in his stomach and spinning in his ears as he drifted. It felt like floating on water. Finally, he felt solid footing under his red socks. The blue and purple clouds vaporized and pulled away, revealing a strong, gentle, violet light filling the horizon before him. Izzy was caressed in deep warmth. He was no longer hungry or in any pain. Izzy was fully healed. Waiting for him just outside the field of purple flowers surrounding him were shadows of tall people wearing red boots Behind them was a great city with skyscrapers made of purple and blue crystal that stretched high into the blue clouds, looked over by a blue sun above them. He soon felt friendly, gentle hands reaching out to him and encircling him, welcoming Izzy into their circle. Detective Williams returned the next morning with a search warrant, along with several other officers and someone from the Child Protective Services. Part of the team had a dog with them on a leash. Williams demanded to see Izzy immediately, but Thornhill said nothing. Monica's mother couldn't help them. She was lying on the broken-down couch, sick from her drinking. Thornhill refused to answer any questions after the police searched the house, but could not find Izzy. One of the policemen let the dog outside the house, which led the team to the area of purple flowers in the backyard. Williams was terrified that Thornhill had killed Izzy and buried him. The officers quickly dug up the flower bed where the dog sniffed, indicating a body was underneath. Meanwhile, Thornhill and his sons stayed in their kitchen. The boys were also quiet, but sneered at the police. The lady from Child Protective Services looked at Monica's arm and then glared back at the boys and Thornhill. They remained quiet. There was a yell from the back area. The police found something horrible. It was the body of the first Mrs. Thornhill. When Williams confronted the father, he looked away just before he was arrested and taken to jail. This time the boys were in tears. They had no idea their mother was dead and buried behind the house. Their father always told them she had abandoned them. They were terrified as the police took them away in a separate van from the juvenile reform school for children who had committed crimes. Roberta, Monica's mother, rose up and finally realized all that was happening. The lady from Child Protective Services told her she should pack up her belongings, take her daughter somewhere else, but warned if Monica was ever harmed again, that she would be taken away from Roberta. Roberta pulled the few things she owned into an old beaten suitcase and walked down the road toward town, where she had a cousin who could provide a room and food for her and Monica. Williams was furious. There was no trace of Izzy, and none of the Thornhills seemed to know what happened to him. The police found the hole in the house where the slats had blown away from the walls, as if there had been a huge explosion. In time, the shack was torn down, and the site was sold to a farmer for growing vegetables. Williams grieved the loss of Izzy, but he eventually found peace by marrying a wonderful woman. They adopted 2 children from a local orphanage, children that no one else would take and love. Far beyond all of the people on Earth was Izzy's real home, where he was free in a distant purple world, a world where he was stolen and hidden on Earth by an evil advisor to the king, who did not want the boy to become the next ruler of their world. However, Izzy grew into a brilliant and kind man. He became a new kind of ruler in his home world, leading with kindness and understanding for all of his people, especially the children who needed love and somewhere special to call their own space. There were no orphans ever again in the blue world, where everyone wore red boots and loved smelling their delightful purple flowers.